Hello again, and thank you for joining us on the conclusion of Part 1 of Dumpster Fire. In the first 3 episodes, we gave Billy a chance to apologize, to reflect, and to explain. We also updated you on his current condition, and then re-updated you when it worsened. This is the last time you'll hear from his conversation with Jordan Harbinger, and it's most likely the last time you'll hear from his pal Mike. Billy's not going away from this story, but he'll certainly be less prominent in the near term. Part 2 next week will introduce some new characters and dive a little deeper into Fire Festival itself. Oh, and stick around until the end of the episode for a surprise update.
I think I met Billy first at an investor meeting in New York. I worked for a couple of early stage venture funds investing in technology businesses. Billy had first started a business called Spling, which was in a accelerator in New York. It was kind of my responsibility working at a fund to go around and due diligence on potential investments. Spling, I believe, happened to be a company that one of my former bosses invested in, and that's kind of how Billy first came on my radar. We really became friends, though, is when he started his company Magnesis. We had both taken some time away from school. I was working for a fund. He was running his company. I think he came in to meet with one of my bosses who had invested in either Magnesis or in Spling, and we shook hands. You know, at the end of the meeting, Billy said, "Hey, we're having a boat party this weekend. You should come." He had a bunch of the New York Giants there, a whole bunch of other people. Relatively small event, but it was kind of a similar scene of people that I had met maybe in New York who also worked in tech or finance or music. I think a lot of people would say maybe they think some of their best friends are too egotistical or too full of themselves or too this or too that, and nobody's perfect. I've got my faults. Billy certainly had his. Starting out in VC, it's advantageous to have good relationships with smart entrepreneurs because they could be starting a future business that could do well. They can introduce you to a friend that's starting a successful company. So it was in my best interest to be on good terms with Billy. From a social standpoint, it was advantageous to be friends with Billy as well. Billy threw great parties, great events. People wanted to go to them. They were always a great time. A lot of my friends went, and no one was at the time thinking oh, this is all gonna, be in a documentary one day. We just thought this was someone else throwing parties.
Do you think you were drawn in by the status that came with celebrities and Instagram influencers? Because, for example, Magnesis, it's a status play, right? It even sold status. The cards were a status symbol. At least that seems to be the idea. And the Fire app was a business that also made sense and had legs, but it clearly did not come with as much potential for status as a festival like Firefest. Was that the draw that led to what looks to be an obsession with status?
Fire Festival started by running Magnesis member trips on something we called Magnesis Air, which is this little propeller airline that we launched to fly people to essentially uncharted territory. And the reasoning behind that was, and the reason why I started Magnesis was because I wanted my friends who worked in certain industries to meet people outside of their industry. So if they worked in tech, I wanted them to meet the people who worked in fashion or finance or entertainment, because when those meetings did happen, that's when a lot of really cool things kind of came to be. And I felt like just by leaving college and moving to New York as an 18-year-old with running a tech company, I was just experiencing so much that I never thought I would experience. And every time something new or different would happen, or I would go through and experience something, I wanted to share it with everybody. I wanted to show my friends, my family, and guys, look what's out there. You have no idea what we found or what we're doing. And that's how Fire Festival started. I just wanted to show everybody Norman's Key. I was bringing all of my friends down. And I know there's all these stories about who came up with the idea or whatever it was. The reality is it was a high school friend who said, you should totally do a treasure hunt on Normans for your Magnesis members. And that's how the Fire Festival started. It was just this dream of sharing it with people.
Aubrey McClendon was one of the entrepreneurs that you looked up to, the oil and gas tycoon, who turned out to be himself involved in a fraud. I wonder, did that influence you at all? If I look up to someone and they do something that's not above board, I'd like to think I would stop admiring them, but a lot of times, especially with younger people, we just adjust our moral compass to suit that person's actions. Do you think that might have happened to you at all?
So I absolutely did not witness him or anybody else committing crimes, and that certainly did not, make me lie. I lied because I was trying to go too fast and, lost sight of what was important, and that's on me. So no mentor, advisor, investor had any role in me making my mistakes.
The exaggerations and I should just say the lies, right, of revenue and bookings and things like that, it's not rounding up. It's like blatantly making shit up. Were you thinking at the time, well, this isn't really right, this isn't really in the realm of reality, or even thinking that it was a crime? What was going through your head in the moments where you decided I'm going to make a doctored bank statement or something along those lines?
I think that since I moved to New York as an 18-year-old who dropped out of college after his first year and was trying to make a company work and found myself dealing in entertainment, all these industries that, frankly, I didn't even know how they worked or if they really even existed the way they did, I kind of internalized this mindset where I knew I didn't understand the world, and then I would kind of create this dream scenario or dream goal, like, what if I could do this? And then it kept happening, and it kept working, and I kept kind of achieving those dreams. So I think my mindset was, well, what if I just put these revenue numbers down? And I'm going to find a way to make that happen. And just so caught up in, like, I'm going to do this and prove we can do it and prove it's real. And that was the mindset at the time, and it kept going deeper and deeper. And obviously looking back now, it's disgusting. But I think that's where, even when I wasn't committing crimes through my previous companies and building real value, I just developed this concept where I could just create some sort of scenario and make that scenario happen, and I got lost in that.
Thanks, Billy. That was certainly interesting, because right now all we have are documentaries made by other people that speculate what he had in mind, and one interview from him before he was put in jail and given a lot of time to reflect. One of the questions that we have whenever we're dealing with somebody who has gone behind bars and then come out is, are we dealing with somebody that has changed, or are we simply dealing with somebody who has found a better way to sugarcoat their story? Are we dealing with Billy McFarland 2.0, or is this the same Billy telling us the same story, trying to get us to believe some of the same things? And really the only way we're going to be able to see that is time will tell. Is he changed, or is he up to his old tricks? And that's something that we'll only be able to see over time.
Over the past year, we've kind of been talking about a few different ideas about what Billy wants to do and what he's able to do really from prison. So far, he's written 2 books. One is a fiction novel, one is his memoir. And we were working on releasing one of those this year when the COVID-19 outbreak occurred. It quickly became apparent to me that releasing a book this year just wasn't going to do well, that we needed to do something different. Given everything that's happened in 2020, I felt like prisoners were certainly being forgotten about. I think this is something that largely goes untalked, but U.S. prisoners lost visitation rights when the COVID-19 outbreak happened in March. So since March, no U.S. prisoners have been able to see their families. In response to visitations being closed down, we launched Project 315, which allowed for us to accept donations and then to fund certain inmates' commissary accounts so they could call their families. We called it Project 315, as $3.15 is the cost of each 15-minute phone call from prison. $3.15 doesn't seem like a lot to us, but in prison that's a lot of money. And as you can imagine, a 15-minute phone call on the outside is only going to cost you maybe 5 to 10 cents max. So there's a pretty high margin that they're paying on that. Most prisoners come from families that are in poverty in the United States, and so they don't even have enough money to send to their loved ones in prison so that they can make the phone calls each month. So we launched a website called project315.com. We started taking donations, starting paying out to prisoners. We got a ton of press from some of the largest publications in the world, and within 10 days, the Federal Bureau of Prisons said they would make phone calls free for all U.S. prisoners going forward. I think in the month of July, while on a trip to Los Angeles, I met Peter Vincer and the Notorious team, talked through a few different ideas that we had for this podcast, and after a few meetings, felt like we were kind of on the same page around the story we wanted to tell and also the platform they wanted to give to Billy and the other inmates. I would hope that viewers and listeners could gain a lot from this new perspective that we're offering here. By no means is Billy innocent, be the first to say that, but there's also another side to the story that hasn't been told. And I think that everyone's deserving of a second chance. You don't need to give him that chance yet, and I think that over time we'll see whether or not I'm right or wrong. I'd like to hope that I'm right here, and I wouldn't have been helping Billy out over the past couple of years if I didn't think that he really was changing for the best. He owes a whole lot of money, and the only way he's going to be able to pay that money back is by him starting to create some new value. That money can then be paid back. He knows that he's being watched under a magnifying glass. We all do. None of us have any intent to do anything that's illegal or misrepresenting what we're trying to do. The stakes are already just too high for him. You're going to have to take my word for it, but I think there's still a lot of good that could come from Billy McFarland if utilized in the right way.
And that concludes Dumpster Fire Part 1. You can find some really cool, really high-quality merch over at dumpsterfire.show. And since Karen didn't understand what dumpsterfire.show is, it's a website. You can add www. To the beginning of dumpsterfire.show, and it works just the same. Oh, and don't forget that every single penny of profit will go directly towards prison reform causes, transparently. Before we go, I do have a little update on Billy. We received a letter from him last Monday, dated October 29th, and he's in high spirits, though that was, in fact, his 15th day in solitary confinement. Up to that point, he was allowed to leave only a couple times, for 1 hour, to a small cage just outside. He confirmed his cellmate is also, separately, in the SHU. For those of us who want Billy to get what he deserves, don't worry, it can't get much worse than this. Till next time.